We are now live. They always told me wait a couple minutes. We should be good to start. Nobody's on just yet, but they'll pop on.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Version 301 today. Street stock inspection. First, a little bit of background. A couple years ago, we got together with most of the other street stock tracks in Wisconsin, and with the help, there was two gentlemen that were instrumental. Ron Cole and Greg Herman were really the leaders in that with us, and we were able to create a unified dirt street stock rule package. That rule package is used at Gravity Park, The Hill, UPIR, Seymour, Beaver Dam, Wilmot, Luxembourg, and now Eagle River. That's really a testament to a lot of hard work by the leaders in those areas, putting that together. So that's a great thing for the racers, that they're able then, on a common rule package, be able to jump from track to track without fear of having a problem with their race car. On that same note, we've got to give a plug out to one of the inspectors up at 141, Matt Von Treek. Matt dealing with some health issues. I know they're doing a fundraiser for him May 3rd. If you can help him out on that deal, definitely be appreciated. Moving on with the street stock inspection, the whole intent of this series is to help the racers get their cars through pre-race inspection. This does not limit any of the items that can be looked at post-race, but this will help you get an idea of what we're looking for. And just remember, the whole idea of inspection as a rule is to help get the racer home safe and to provide a level platform for inspection. We at Beaver Dam use a check sheet system. Dave will be the first going through that. Those check sheets are available online. Chris has got them up. You can print yours off. They do have to be completed. There's a header portion you can fill out ahead of time. Saves us a little bit of time in that pre-inspection, along with a bunch of other forms that Chris was probably going to be mentioning to you anyhow, that you'll need to get completed to get you through and registered for that first time. With that, we'll move right on. The first thing we want to look at is cockpit inspection. I'll turn it over to Dave Casper, who will be our first presenter. Jim Tremblay will be following along. For those who have seen the series, two of our lead inspectors here at Beaver Dam. So, Dave, why don't you take us right inside the cockpit?
Okay, thanks, Jerry. So, obviously, the personal safety gear also has to be presented to us during inspection, and you'll do yourself and us a favor if you come to the inspection area with all of your personal safety gear. But moving on from that, some of this was covered in previous videos. We obviously are concerned about the condition and the age of the seat belts as indicated by the tags that are included on them. There's enough of that information out there that 2 to 3 years maximum, 2 years recommended. New date codes from SFI. The existing date codes still use a punch or used a punch system. That is obsolete now, where they actually have a date printed on them, which is much more understandable and much more legible and easy to find. Seat mounting. Obviously, seat mounting has to be the seat has to be mounted to the portion of the roll bar, crossbar that is substantially, significantly as strong as the roll bar, and should be an integral part of it. The floor should be a minimum of 20 gauge thick. It should be absent of any kind of rust or deformation, so that we can assure that it's strong enough to keep objects from the track from coming up and compromising your legs. Same thing with the firewall. We want to look in here and see that we have a complete firewall. If you take a look underneath here, this car has got an excellent firewall on it, something that we'd love to see in every car. Keeps hot gases, liquids, etc. If there's a motor explosion or a compromise to the cooling system, keeps all that hot stuff off of you, and that's what it's all about. Heel and toe or a toe strap on the throttle pedal is obviously a must so that you can close the stuck throttle. As far as the cage construction, please refer to your rule package because there's excellent diagrams and text in there that indicates how the cage has to be generally constructed. 1 3/4 095 wall. If you've recently bought a used race car and you're not sure what your tubing size or thickness is, we certainly can ultrasound test that for you so you don't have to do crazy things like drilling holes in it or trying to measure it in some other way. There are some cars out there, especially older cars, that may have substandard tubing in it, and we certainly don't want you to race in a car that's built like that. So if you have any questions, bring it in and we'll measure it for you. If we have any questions about your race car, bring it to tech, we'll measure it even if you don't want us to. Door bars. 3 door bars on each door. The driver's door has to have uprights between, and it has to be fully plated, again with 095 thick plating. Keep intrusion out, keep you away from your competition. All steering parts have to be steel, with the possible exception of the hub. Hub has to be fully functional and easily removed. We inspect that for wear and make sure there's no wear. We really like to see a padded steering wheel in case this thing does try to come back at you. At least there's some protection for your chest. And a shut-off switch. I don't know if you can see this, Chris, but here we have a shut-off switch that shuts off all the electrical system. It should be easily found by the rescue people, and we will ask you to check and test that when you're in it. The other thing that we'll ask you to do is sit in the seat, and we will look at where you're in relation to the roll bar. You may not have a situation where it puts the top of your helmet closer than 2 inches from the top of the roll bar, because seatbelts stretch a lot and we don't want you getting your head up above that halo bar, etc. Padding anywhere where the driver's head can come into contact with it. This is nice thick padding. We don't want to see that little swimming pool noodle stuff that becomes goo and it's burning. Keep this in good shape. It's your best friend. The other thing that we want to see is we want to see a good, in good condition safety window net that has an adequately sized crossbar, not some piece of 16th inch re-rod or some thread all. We want a good substantial 1/4 inch minimum rod going through here with well installed mounting points to catch this. Keeps you inside the car, keeps your arms inside the car. Really a good thing. Bars on the windows, minimum of 3 on the windshield. This car, being a Beaver Dam car, has mesh. We highly, highly recommend mesh across the entire window opening. Pebbles, rocks, brake rotors, all kinds of bad things that you don't want to have company with in your race car out. And I think it does a much better job than just the bars alone. So that's a plug for that.
One of the other things, Dave, I always look for, and I know it's on our check sheet, and you may have met with Chris, if you notice right in the middle here, they've got a divider bar in that halo area. That is another requirement. One of the things that we do look for, this diagonal bar here. It can either split it front to rear or
run the way this one is running, or it could run from the corner across over to that corner.
You're right.
Which is fine, as long as that we have a nice open path. If we have to do a driver extrication, we want to have a large enough area right above the seating area so that the driver can be extracted through the roof if it's required. The other thing I want to mention is Mike's got a fire extinguisher in this car, and that's fine. It's not required, it's optional. But if you do have one, we want to see it very solidly mounted. And I can say that there's 2 things I like about this. This is mounted with a steel strap, which is minimal in my opinion. And the other thing is the bottom of the fire extinguisher is butted up against that little, so that it can't slide out of the mount and become a missile inside the car. It'll slide up against that plate. So that's a good installation there. If you have a fuel line that runs through the car, it has to be encased in a steel tube It's jointless from front to back so that we don't have a leak of fuel in the car. Other than that, I think we're in pretty good shape. Oh, the other thing I just want to mention is the back firewall here, or the trunk wall. That also has to be integral, has to be top to bottom with no big gaps or anything in it, and this one's very nicely done as well.
On to Jim. Jim is gonna do a general walk around.
All right, first thing we're going to talk about is the body and how it's mounted for each particular vehicle. All the panels to fit correctly and be nice. The seams.
Just gonna go.
Switch sides.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the sun, then I don't have a glare.
So yeah, we want to make sure all the panels are fitting correctly, and you can see how this body goes on. The other thing we're looking at are window openings, that they remain stock, and all the pillars that come stock on the car are in the car. So we don't want you cutting out any of these pillars along the way. On the windows, you can cover the small windows if you choose, but if you do one side, you have to do the other. So we're going to come back here and start on the back of the car. One of the things we're going to look at first on the very back of the car is the tow hooks. This will help our safety crews get you guys off the track if need be in a quick manner. Spoilers are legal, 60.5 inches across, 5 inches high from the bottom up to the top of the edge here is your for that.
And you measure on the back
On the back side, yes. When you measure across, you measure the back side, not the front side of the spoiler. Okay? 2 on the trunk. So he's got it hinged here very nicely, and he's got his 2 hood pins back here. And we'll move along down the side of the car. Rub rails, approved rub rails, 1 inch in diameter. And you can see right here how he's got it cut at a 45-degree angle, and it's capped very nice. No sharp edges on these rub rails. And that's also, we're looking for no sharp edges on the body as well. Okay? The other thing is, some cars you guys use come with sunroofs, and you can see Mike, this car came with a sunroof in it, and it's he's got it sealed off real nice up there with steel. For weights, when you guys come across the scale, must have your weight on your car, both driver and passenger side. So automatic is 3,100. If you got a manual transmission, it's 3,300 pounds is your minimum weight, so they must be displayed on both sides of the car. As Dave kind of covered the windshield, we also look at the windshield. Sun visors, approved sun visors on the front are okay.
Do they have to be a certain size?
About what he's got here, Jerry, what do you, I don't know how
Just can't impede the driver's view.
and it can be hard plastic like this, or if the guys want to tape them off, that's fine. Tape is fine as well. Okay. Same thing. We're going to make sure the hood fits nicely. He's got it hinged here, a maximum of 4 hood pins, so you can use 4 across the front, or if you don't want to use hinges, you can put 2 up front, 2 in the back.
One of the things on visors, Jim, and I know we run into this, guys want to take and put permanent visors on the side here.
Right.
That's a no-no.
Right. The windows must stay open and in stock dimensions, so no closing those off as well. And then the plastic nose pieces are fine, or steel. And again, we're going to be looking for that tow strap, cable or chain. Remember, this has got to lift your car and hold your car up for the safety guys, in case they have to get you off the track.
That pretty much wraps up the
Yep.
wraparound. We'll jump back now. We got Dave Casper waiting for us. He's going to start in with the under trunk inspection.
Do the light to it. Not a lot to see back here, but important stuff to see back here. First thing that we want to talk about is the fuel cell. Obviously, the fuel cell has to be contained in a steel can. 20 gauge can minimum. And I don't know what that is. That's 5.9, so basically 40 thousandths. A cap, in this case tethered, which is a great idea. We always ask people to do that. I'm sure as this car gets refurbished this year, we'll get the number on here, which is also important. The maximum size for the fuel cell, 22 gallon, probably about an 8-gallon cell. And it needs to be very securely restrained so that it doesn't leave the building in case this thing gets upside down or hits something really hard really fast. So strapping, minimum of 1 1/4 by 1/8, or 1 inch by 1/8. So these straps are fine all the way around. The cell has to be a minimum of 12 inches above the ground, and it certainly is. We can. Although the car is up on jack stands, it's going to be way above that. The rear of the frame can be reinforced if there has been rust issues and that kind of thing.
Which is not an uncommon situation because of the age of a lot of the cars, the frames that we're dealing with in this class.
Correct.
Where am I looking for that?
And here we can see that we have shocks mounted using stock mounts, which is required top and bottom. And the springs also being mounted on top of the rear wheel and being fit in non-adjustable cups. At this point, when we're looking at a race car early in the year, we're not looking for anything that relates to competition, irregularities, illegalities. We're looking for safety issues. So that's what we're concentrating on. As far as the fuel cell goes, we want to make sure that there is a vent on the, or a check valve on the vent, and a check valve on the flow line so that when the car gets upside down, fuel stays in it. And an IMCA approved flapper valve is required underneath the cap so that if it gets upside down, you're not just relying on the cap seal to keep the fuel inside the fuel tank. So we'll open that up and look at it. And of course, it has to have a foam cell bladder inside of it. So that's about all I've got back here.
All right, Jim, I believe we're moving up front
Yep.
with yours for the next segment.
Okay, again, when we start looking under the hood, even though we looked at it from the cockpit side, we're going to look at the firewall, make sure it's full. We don't see any holes in the firewall on this side. We're going to look for... Okay. So yeah, we're going to look, make sure you guys got the 4412 carburetor with a 1-inch spacer plate down here. We're going to look and make sure you got the 2 return springs on your accelerator. We're also going to look and make sure we got cast iron heads and block at this point. Okay. The other thing we're looking for is a fan shroud on your cars. We're also looking for an approved overflow. So it can either go into a container, or as Mike has it here, he has it run into the frame rail, which is perfectly fine.
The reason for that is we just don't want that overflow straightening out that hose and spraying back through anything on you or on anybody else. So this way it's dissipated and it's restrained, so it's not going to get at anybody readily. The other thing I just want to comment on with regards to the 2 carburetor springs, this is well mounted. We don't want to see those things stretched out and stuck onto a radiator hose clamp or some other baloney like that. That's what keeps your throttle from sticking in. It's one of the most feared things that can happen to a race driver. So spend a little time and engineer a solution like that. It's not hard to do. It doesn't cost much money.
And if you look at this car, Mike actually has 3 springs on just to secure it. You see one going in the opposite direction, which is ideally the correct way to do it to minimize the wear on the throttle shafts. Also, additionally, the single stock OEM master cylinder. Jim's got his hand on it now. And also, once we're up front here, we have the hood up. We can look at the headers to make sure we're not doing anything crazy with those. It's supposed to be an inexpensive set of headers. And then the OEM steering components, other than you could use the 3-piece IMCA approved spindle with the part numbers that are prescribed in the rule book. So we're looking at those components as well as the front brakes just to make sure we're doing stock stuff there. We're within the compliance of rule book. As Dave alluded to, we're not necessarily getting real crazy about performance yet. It's more so just trying to keep everything on the up and up. When you got the hood up, we'll also take an obligatory peek under there to make sure nobody is crazy enough to do aluminum bumpers. Jim and I see some of that on the pavement side of racing, but that kind of gets it in the ballpark as far as what we're looking for underneath the hood.
The other thing I just want to mention that we see a lot of is on the castle nuts, on your steering components, like right here. If there's a hole and there's a cotter pin that can go through there, let's get the cotter pins in there, guys. We see a lot of cotter pins missing. Certainly don't want those to back off and you guys lose your steering out there on the track. So we want to make sure all those have cotter pins in them.
But one other thing that every racetrack is looking for in today's world is no antifreeze permitted. Right. Antifreeze becomes a hazardous site cleanup, and in the dirt world, we just don't need those kind of headaches. So that's why those questions come up. Dave, wheels and tires.
Okay, wheels and tires. Prescribed wheels and tires, racing wheels only, of course. Tires, these are IMCA Hoosier G60s, which is the tire that's universally used. We want to see.
Well, they can use the H500s.
Correct.
And there are some old Goodyear part numbers, but you really don't see too much any of that. But
We don't. And I wanted to point out, if you do buy used IMCA tires from somebody, they may have had some siping and grinding done on it. You know, we don't want you doing that on new tires. You can recondition them, but we don't want to see any kind of marks outside of the edge of this tire block here. So here across to the other side, to the same point on the other side. Anything else? So these have had a little conditioning in them. That's the extent of that what we'd like to see. With regards to lug nuts and studs, we want to see heavy-duty racing studs with the lug nuts that thread on, so that you have a complete nut full of threads. We don't want to see that nut stopping way out here because it's the studs are too short. And we will check width on these occasionally.
Yep.
Maximum width on these is 8-inch wheel.
The other thing, while we wheel covers, that was a discussion and a rule change that came in some time ago. You are allowed a beadlock on the right rear, and if you run a wheel cover, it has to be a bolt-on. That bolt-on, that's just to prevent those coming off and getting in the grandstands and possibly injuring someone. If you choose to run a non-beadlock wheel and you're running an expansion ring type mounting system, that ring would need to be welded to the wheel. I don't know too many guys are utilizing that in this class, but that is one of the concerns with the wheels as well. And we'll periodically ask you to pull the covers and look at it. Yeah, Jim, you want to touch on transponders and?
Yeah.
One more thing I want to mention about tires. You mentioned that there is more than one brand of tire, make a tire available. That's true. But the rules say if you use, say, Hoosier G60s, they have to be on all four corners of the car. So same kind of tires all the way around, regardless of which one you use. So, thank you.
Okay. Yep. Transponders. You can see Mike has his pouch mounted right here for his transponder. It has to be 24 inches from the rear end housing back. You see that real good down there. The other thing that we wanted to talk about, helmets need to be 2010 or newer on the rating. If you take and open up the helmet inside, you can move the cloth and there's a red sticker in there. It'll tell you what year your helmet was rated. And the other thing is driver suits. Guys, no holes, armpits anywhere. Make sure those are all in good condition. Now's the time to replace those. Get good stuff for your gloves. Make sure there's no holes in your gloves. SFI rated gloves. Shoes, same thing. Make sure there's no holes in your shoes. We're going to look at all of that stuff when you bring it down to inspection. We just want you to be protected.
That kind of wraps up. We just did gloss over one thing up front when we were doing the under hood. Every in this class does run a rev limiter. So for the open motor, it was on the firewall. Sharp-eyed guys picked that up. He uses the digital. It is 6,600 RPM. If you're running a crate, it's a different setup. But you do need to check and make sure. They will look at it in pre-tech. But that usually becomes more of a post-race thing. And there's a couple different ways of checking it, either with they'll buzz the box. Sometimes if it's a chip box, we'll pull the chips or swap chips with you to make sure that you've got the correct chip and running the correct setting. That's been one of the things that came in street stock rules. That doesn't apply. Pretty much that wraps up a pre-inspection. If you have questions, don't hesitate to hit Chris up through the website, www.wismotorsports.net. I believe my contact information is there as well. All the forms are down there as well. New website, definitely check that out. Much more user-friendly. To seeing you guys all out at the track. Bring your cars up early. I believe we've got 2 practice dates set up. So you get them out, get them shook down, and schedules out there as well. And we should be looking for next week to probably do Grand Nationals, right, Chris?
Yep.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right. We got to give a plug to Mike Held, my cameo appearance right now. Thank you for allowing us to take up some time on your Sunday and using your race car. We appreciate that, and look forward to seeing everybody out at the racetrack.
Bye.
Bye.